The worst decision Camilla Parker, B.S., has ever made. She has been pushing her daughter Laura farther and farther into the holiest areas of the British monarchy for years, and no one has been able to stop her. At the Windsor Castle service, Queen Camilla presided over the royal family. However, Prince William had finally had enough in April. He took up a pen and penned a document that rocked the castle to its core. Laura's access to the monarchy was not the only thing that was destroyed by that letter. According to reports, Camilla has not recovered from the message it conveyed her because it was so stark and icy. And nobody anticipated the king's next move when Camilla went straight to Charles and demanded that he mend it. Laura's bold choice. First, let's ask a question. Laura Lopes is exactly who? She is not a royal. On behalf of the crown, she performs no official obligations. She doesn't have any sort of operating mandate. She is a private citizen by all official definitions, and like everyone watching this video right now, she has no constitutional claim to the hallowed areas of the British monarchy. Nevertheless, she continued to attend Britain's most prestigious and revered royal occasions for almost 10 years. Events exclusively for official dignitaries and working royals. Not infrequently, but consistently and purposefully, putting herself a little bit further inside the inner circle each time. And no one stopped her for years. It began in June 2022 at the Order of the Garter Service, one of the most prestigious events on the British calendar that is only open to working royals and knights. Laura was present. No explanation, no functional role, and no title. The world's eyes were on every face in the room at Queen Elizabeth's state burial in September 2022, which was the most viewed royal event in living memory. Queen Elizabeth's momentous and poignant funeral continues to reverberate tonight. During her 70 years as queen, she set an example of responsibility, service, and dignity. Laura was added to the family. Then followed the coronation in Westminster Abbey in May 2023. Laura was shown wearing a green ensemble, but what transpired next went beyond all previous boundaries. In the middle of the ceremony's most photographed moment, her sons Gus and Louis stood as pages of honor on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. The world saw Camilla's grandkids as members of the sovereign family despite having no formal position within the organization and no genetic claim. And Camilla was the only one who permitted any of it to occur. Camilla had been steadily and covertly advancing into the most prominent moments of the monarchy for years. On the day her husband was made king, Camilla decided that the sons of her daughter Laura, the grandson she had from her previous marriage to Andrew Parker, who had no royal ancestry at all, should be on the world's most photographed balcony. She wanted them there, not because the institution requested it. Nobody had the courage to say no to her at that moment. Thus, this pattern persisted. The royal family was present at the Royal Ascot during the June 2025 Royal Ascot, which uniquely demonstrates the family's understated sophistication. In the royal enclosure, Laura emerged. The most intimate and private royal event of the year, Sandringham Christmas in December 2024, is only held for the closest members of the family. Laura also entered through that door. In March 2025, she attended her first Sandringham Christmas and the Kellenham Festival. In front of the cameras, she strolled boldly beside Camilla. Without uttering a single word, every appearance conveyed the same message. This is where I belong. And the institution's response was quiet for years. However, this is what that quiet was concealing. William was not an impartial witness to a stranger moving forward. He was observing someone he had yelled at when he was a teenager. In her 2010 book, royal author Katie Nicholl described it. Laura and William used to argue viciously and bitterly. William would accuse Camilla of ruining Diana, his mother. Laura would retaliate by yelling, "Your father has ruined my life." These were hardly two step-siblings navigating a challenging family dynamic in a courteous manner. These two teenagers were utterly destroying one another because of the mess their parents had created. And one of the most embarrassing royal scandals of the 20th century was the cause of that damage. The heir to the British monarchy, Andrew Parker B.S., was surreptitiously caught on a phone in December 1989 having a private discussion with his mistress when Charles was married to Diana and Camilla was married to her husband at the time. Diana considered the recording sick and when it was released in January 1993, everyone could hear the future King of England making jokes about being resurrected as a tampon to stay near Camilla Parker. When those headlines appeared on every front page in the world, William was 11 years old, Charles was still married, and Camilla was still married. He already knew exactly what his father had been doing, and for how long by the time he was a teenager fighting Laura in the royal corridors. He was carrying that. That was the true nature of the fights. At least on the surface, the combat eventually came to an end. Eliza, Laura's daughter, was selected by William to be a bridesmaid during his marriage to Kate in 2011. The world perceived it as harmony and the advancement of a blended family. However, William never ceased carrying the weight of an event that occurred years prior to the wedding, which caused something inside of him to open up and never completely close again. Charles set up a secret encounter between William and Camilla at Highgrove less than a year after Diana's passing. William was 16. His mother had just been buried. It had left him hollow. And now his father was requesting that he sit across from the lady he blamed for his mother's pain in order to reconcile with her. William then left. In the room, he sat. His emotions were entirely locked, and his face remained still. Camilla received nothing from him. There was not a single fracture in the wall he had constructed around himself, not even a smile. After it was finished, he departed. William was shocked by something that happened soon after. Precise details of that secret meeting were leaked to the British press in a matter of days. Information that could only have originated from that room. The encounter was depicted as cordial and pleasant in the tale that was initially revealed by the global press. It said Camilla was nice and totally non-threatening, just the kind of stepmother a bereaved boy could come to terms with. In his biography, Spare, Harry claims that the specifics included precise information that could only have been disclosed by Camilla, the only other person in attendance. In order to improve her public image and pave the way for her marriage to Charles, she had employed a spin doctor named Mark Bolan. Even while William was still aching from the loss of his mother, a journalist had taken his private sadness, his silence, and his suffering and repackaged it into a positive tale about Camilla. According to sources, William completely collapsed when he realized what had transpired. Harry discovered him sobbing and sitting with his brother when everything had been taken away. At the age of 16, William told Harry, "I don't think I like her," followed by, "We are not going to be safe with her." All of his statements proved to be accurate. He never truly trusted her again because of what she did during that meeting. That same trend continued throughout Laura's 10 years of moving more into royal spaces, one event at a time. The Parker BS family is claiming what the institution never legally granted them via quiet persistence and closeness. William observed it for years, kept quiet, and recorded every second of it. Then April 2026 arrived. William had had enough of watching the Royal Mandy service, one of the holiest events on the British calendar. The big step has to be made. Nobody anticipated the move. You must first comprehend what the Royal Mandy service is before you can comprehend what William performed. Because this isn't a garden party, banquet, or other social event where guest lists can be changed. One of the earliest royal rituals still in existence in Britain dates back to 1210, when King John gave alms to the underprivileged for the first time. Moreover, for over 800 years, it has operated continuously. And because it was taking place on April 2, 2026, at St. Asaph Cathedral in North Wales, it carried particular weight this year. The service has only been held in Wales for the second time in nearly 800 years. Everyone in the country was watching it. This is the significance of the ceremony. Fundamentally, the Royal Mandy is the only occasion on the British calendar when the country's most powerful person travels among common people and provides them with direct assistance. The king personally places unique coins in the hands of 77 men and 77 women who have been nominated for years of silent, unselfish Christian devotion to their communities. Charles is 77 years old, and in 2026, 77 men and 77 women were selected because the number of beneficiaries always corresponds to the king's age. This ritual is based on humility, selflessness, and total rejection of privilege. Consider what it means to put someone like Laura in the center of it. A woman who has no official business, no job, and no royal title. When you do that, you are using a ceremony that is based solely on service and humility as a social benefit for the Queen's daughter. Something sacred has become personal because of you. William was unable to accept that. This was about the significance of Laura standing inside the ceremony and what it represents. A coordination conference was conducted at Buckingham Palace in the weeks preceding the service to discuss the arrangements. William's blood ran cold as the officials from Camilla's office brought up the guest list. Laura's attendance was depicted as predetermined. That was the end of it. Laura would be there. Beneath that presumption, there was a very clear message. The Queen is Camilla. Wherever she goes, so does her daughter. Nobody has the right to disagree. People in the room characterized Camilla's behavior as condescending and utterly disrespectful when William's team pushed back and submitted a formal objection. They honestly thought there was nothing else to talk about. William pondered that for a while. Then he made a startling choice. He turned to his colleagues and instructed them to write it down. Laura Lopes would not be attending the royal Mandy service, according to a formal letter that was permanently recorded in the palace's official records. William wrote it down for a very straightforward reason. He was well aware of the person he was facing. The things that were never put on paper had always been Camilla's greatest weapon. A spoken directive to keep Laura away could be easily disregarded, misrepresented, or leaked to a newspaper, where it would be reported that William was unkind and inconsiderate to his stepmother's family. However, it is impossible to falsify a formal written document that is permanently stored in the official palace records. There is no denying it. Additionally, William had previously observed Camilla's procedure firsthand. This is what took place in 2002. At the time, Harry was a youngster who had gone to a drug treatment facility by himself. Charles had nothing to do with that visit. Charles made no arrangements, didn't learn anything, and didn't step in. However, 17-year-old Prince Harry, the youngest son of Britain's heir to the throne, needed to personally witness the perils of drug misuse as the news of his drug use was about to make headlines. Camilla's spin doctor took a cold, deliberate action. He presented the earlier rehabilitation visit to the media as a whole different narrative. In the version that circulated throughout Britain, Charles was portrayed as a proactive, worried father who had personally marched his son to a rehabilitation facility to deal with the repercussions after learning about his actions. Charles appeared responsible and compassionate as a result. Camilla appeared to be the ideal mate for Britain's future queen as she stood devotedly next to him. Petronella Wyatt, Camilla's own friend, acknowledged that it appeared as though a son was abandoned to the wolves in order to improve his father's reputation. Harry claimed to have been shoved directly beneath a bus. The personal struggle and suffering of a teenage boy had been appropriated, repackaged, and used as a PR stunt. William was not going to give Camilla another private chat to deal with because he was fully aware of what had been done. The letter was written, signed, and permanently added to the palace's official records. William, however, did not end there. The way the agreement was drafted went well beyond simply preventing Laura from attending this particular ceremony. It was designed as an official revision to the regulations controlling who is permitted to attend royal ceremonial events. This meant that going ahead, palace officials would refer to this text as the standard whenever an occasion arose. People could no longer just presume they were invited because of their mother's identity. Attendance was now required to be supported by a real official position. The response was no if you couldn't identify a precise task you were there to perform. The list no longer included Laura's name. The door was closed. And the palace did not simply blow up when Camilla discovered what he had done. It trembled to its core. The conflict within the conflict. Camilla was reportedly quite enraged when she learned that the exclusion order had already been recorded in the sovereign's journal system. She instantly grasped the meaning of the document. Thus, her response made perfect sense. For everything, not just this event. Within the palace, Camilla had spent more than 10 years meticulously building a network of soft power. Over years of patient care, she had assigned compassionate employees to crucial logistical positions. She had carefully and gradually integrated her children into the monarchy's social structure until their existence seemed normal and expected. That network served as her protection, her shield, and her assurance that her family's position inside the organization would never be compromised. And William had used a single document to get around every single thread in it. What she discovered stopped her cold when she tried to call a crisis meeting of senior domestic personnel. The Prince of Wales's office now received direct deference from several of those officials. Already, the allegiance had changed. Not only has her network been circumvented, silently, it had been swapped out. You are entirely correct. April 5th has not yet been reached in the story. We are still in the run-up to the Mandy service on April 2nd at that point in the story. Camilla is still battling to have the ruling overturned. We are unable to make reference to something that occurred after the same event that we are preparing for. It's easy to get out. We keep Camilla's argument broad and completely eliminate the Easter Sunday liturgy. It doesn't take a particular incident for Camilla's criticism of James to be persuasive. She only draws attention to the fact that, due to Sophie's illness during this time, James has been accompanying Edward to different royal events. She doesn't have to mention a particular service or day. It is the same reasoning. James is permitted to attend and represent his family even though he does not have a job. What makes Laura unique, then? We don't need to link that argument to April 5th since it works flawlessly. She focused on what she believed to be her best point. She gestured to James, the 18-year-old son of Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, and Prince Edward. Sophie had been absent from royal events during this time due to her illness. In order to ensure that the family was still represented, James had been filling in for his father, Edward, at several functions. That was like a knockout blow to Camilla. This young man, who had neither an official title nor a professional royal job, was being subtly invited to royal functions because his mother was unable to go. Camilla then posed the obvious query. Why was Laura any different if it was all right? Why was Laura unable to support her mother, the Queen, in the same manner that James supported his father? William's choice had nothing to do with etiquette, she informed anyone who would listen. It was personal animosity disguised as regulations. That argument was entirely dismantled by William's response. James, Earl of Wessex, is descended from the sovereign house and is a grandchild of Queen Elizabeth II. His attendance at a royal event serves as a living testament to the institution's survival and the continuation of the Windsor line. Laura Lopes doesn't have any of that. She is a Parker BS, a member of Camilla's private family, not a Windsor, and her presence has no constitutional significance or bloodline claim. It was unreasonable to compare those two groupings. William had spent years attempting to eradicate the exact institutional muddle, the gradual, intentional blurring of boundaries between the consort's private family and the royal family, which Camilla had been subtly manipulating since the day she wed Charles. However, Laura's predicament was only a small portion of a much larger issue. In actuality, the battleground was Charles himself, and William and Camilla had been at war for months prior to that coordination meeting. William had one distinct stance following Charles's cancer diagnosis. For the millions of people who love and care for them, as well as for those who are diagnosed with cancer every year, his father needed to relax. He had to take a break from his public responsibilities and devote all of his attention to recovering. That was all. Easy and non-negotiable. However, Camilla was making the exact opposite push. She was urging Charles to continue making appearances, attending events, and appearing in public. It got so terrible that it erupted over a particular occasion, a state banquet for the president of Nigeria. I wish you and the millions of Muslims in Nigeria and around the world the very best. William thought his father was too unwell and frail to be present. Camilla was adamant that they go. It was directly confirmed by an insider. Camilla was certain that they had to be there. Here's what makes that so sinister. Because Camilla was dedicated to Charles, she was not pressuring him to continue working. She was acting in this way because she was afraid of what would happen after Charles resigned. The complete handover of authority to William is postponed every day that Charles continues to rule as an active monarch. Another day in which Camilla maintains her position, authority, and everything she has battled for 30 years. Her husband was not being shielded by her. She was defending herself. William knew exactly what Camilla's machine could do because he had seen her work in this manner for a long time. Harry described in his book, Spare, how Charles's and Camilla's communications team had purposefully spread false information about William and Kate, as well as Harry and Meghan, as part of a premeditated effort that produced favorable headlines for Charles and Camilla at the direct expense of both princes. The allegation that Meghan had made Kate cry in the days leading up to the 2018 royal wedding was one of those made-up tales. Harry identified Charles's and Camilla's procedure as the direct cause. Charles became enraged and accused William and Harry of being paranoid when they directly confronted him about it. He wouldn't listen to them. Harry wrote that they had evidence that stories were being sold against them, as confirmed by reporters in real newsrooms. For years, William kept that knowledge to himself. Because his father adored Camilla, he put up with her. The point at which tolerance eventually ran out was the Mandy exclusion. Princess Anne stood resolutely by William's side during all of this, and she had complete and unwavering support for the exclusion. In 2024 alone, Anne fulfilled 474 royal engagements, more than any other active royal. She is the institution's most diligent employee and its harshest duty enforcer. However, Anne herself once had to face the reality of personal accountability in a public courtroom. After her bull terrier attacked two youngsters in Windsor Great Park in 2002, biting one on the leg and collarbone and leaving the other with scratches all over his back, she became the first working royal in modern history to be found guilty of a crime. Both kids were traumatized when they were brought to the hospital. Without utilizing her title as a shield, Anne showed up in court, entered a guilty plea, paid her fine, and accepted a criminal record. The result was deemed neither moral nor just by the children's family. Additionally, Anne had a history of speeding citations, including one for driving her Bentley at 93 miles per hour. This is the point. Because she has experienced accountability firsthand, and is fully aware of what it entails. Laura Lopes, in her opinion, had done the exact opposite for 10 years, utilizing Camilla's closeness to the monarchy as a pass into areas that the institution had never officially granted her, with no explanation or accountability. Anne's support for William was not subtle. It was a decision. Camilla's arguments had been unsuccessful. Her network had fallen apart, and had united against her. Her husband, the king, was the only person who could still undo everything with a single word. Camilla then went straight to Charles, and her entire life would be shaped by what transpired in that room. Charles's startling decision. A certain type of quiet is more detrimental than any disagreement. It is not consoling. There is no space for hope. It merely informs you of your current situation and the extent of your remaining ground with crushing finality. Camilla was going to enter that quiet head-on. She went directly to Charles and did not characterize William's actions as an administrative overreach or a disagreement over protocol. She presented it as a direct assault on her dignity and the allegiance of her children, who had supported the king during decades of public scorn and disgrace. Growing up, Tom and Laura witnessed their mother being referred to in the media as a Rottweiler, a homewrecker, and the person who ruined the people's princess. Without a single public complaint or act of revenge, they had put up with it all. When loyalty cost them everything, they had remained faithful. And now Camilla's daughter has been officially humiliated in a permanent written record by her own stepson. She advised Charles to use his sovereign prerogative and disregard the directive. A king should not be overthrown by his heir within his own household, she informed him. Insiders claim that Charles remained silent. He didn't stand up for her, didn't pick up the phone to call William, and didn't show her even the slightest sign of support or defiance. He pulled away entirely, and the solution was that quiet. A husband who made the decision to prioritize the institution over his marriage and took full responsibility for the consequences. The quiet itself was as chilly as the reason Charles was immobile. Reversing William's formal order would publicly degrade the man who is currently in charge of the monarchy's operations while Charles battles cancer. Every department, diplomat, and courtier would be alerted that a private marriage request may reverse the heir's official pronouncements. It would provide every opponent of the monarchy the most perilous story imaginable, that the king's wife was controlling and leading him. On one side, Anne and William were perfectly aligned. Charles had made terrible decisions in the past, and he could see that clearly. For decades, he had preferred Camilla to Diana. He had witnessed the public humiliation of his marriage's breakdown. He had seen his boys suffer from wounds that would never completely heal. He was not going to commit the same error in reverse. Every time, the institution prevails. At an intolerable price, he discovered that. Now he would never forget that. However, there is something that fully and devastatingly contextualizes Charles's silence. Charles called Camilla on the evening of August 31, 1997, after receiving a call from Paris confirming Diana's death. As her lover grieved on the other end of the line, Camila took a cigarette from the nightstand, lighted it, and inhaled nervously after Charles conveyed the news, whispering, "My God, Charles, the boys," according to author Christopher Anderson's in-depth description. Charles then asked her a question while crying. Charles inquired, "My darling, what is going to happen to us now?" Immediately after his son's mother passed away. "How am I going to tell William? How can I shield my boys from this? What will happen to us?" That night, as he lay in Balmoral, 15-year-old William was going to receive the worst news of his life. And his dad was immediately on the phone, posing an entirely different query. The 8-year march toward Camila's coronation, the rehabilitation campaign, the spin operation, the press manipulation, and the creation of all Camila currently possesses all began with that inquiry. Almost 30 years later, Charles sat silently as his son, one printed instruction at a time, destroyed the empire that question had created. And Camila recognized something about that quiet that was nearly intolerable. She becomes Queen Dogger after Charles passes away. The title seems important. It has no operational authority, no mandate, no power, and no institutional role at all. William determines whether she stays at Clarence House or not. William determines whether or not she continues to have any public presence. William chooses the man who just puts up with her. She's always been a little terrified of this man. According to sources, Camila has never wanted to let go of her obligations since she loves them. All her life, she has aspired to be queen. And now, while Charles remained seated on the throne and remained silent, her own husband was sitting in front of her, witnessing his son dismantle her family's connection to the institution in real time. That silence was more than simply a setback for Camila. It was a sneak peek at what was to come. After Charles made his decision, Laura Lopes was not present at the Royal Mandy service on April 2, 2026, at St. Asaph Cathedral in North Wales. The most significant aspect of this whole narrative is what that absence means indefinitely. She can't stop the clock. St. Asaph Cathedral in North Wales on April 2, 2026. The state trumpeters played their fanfare as the Guards Amon entered the historic structure. Welsh choirs sang music specially commissioned for this momentous occasion, filling the stone walls. Together, King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived. The king personally gave the Mandy presents to 77 men and 77 women who have quietly served their communities for decades. With the respect that has accompanied it for 8 centuries, the event took place. Laura Lopes wasn't present either. There was no announcement of her absence. It was not clarified. It just was. And Camilla's screams behind closed doors were drowned out by that silence. William's formal exclusion order was never a one-time event. It is now a long-standing institutional tradition. That document will serve as the benchmark for any future appearances by members of Camilla's secret family. Only when you know where this really started does the entire weight of where it finishes make sense. Before Diana ever stepped down the aisle, Camilla made a calculation that started it all. Richard Parker, B.S., Camilla's ex-brother-in-law, claims that Camilla first supported Charles's relationship with Diana because she thought Diana was, in his words, gormless. She believed that Camilla remained Charles's genuine confidant, working covertly behind it, and that Diana was someone she could control, someone docile enough to sit in the marriage. She had no intention of taking a prolonged leave of absence. She just didn't think Diana would pose a significant challenge. The ramifications of the calculation's total and catastrophic failure are still being felt today. Diana didn't lack appetite. When she passed away, 15,000 tons of flowers were left outside London's palaces because she was smart, charismatic, and adored by the general population. The biggest flower tribute in recorded history. At a party in the 1980s, Diana pulled Camilla aside and told her openly that she knew exactly what was going on between her and Charles. Camilla did not put an end to it. The son of the woman she underestimated is destroying all she created, decades after she concluded Diana was too easily manipulated to pose a real threat. Every stage of the calculation was unsuccessful. Harry wrote about his first encounter with Camilla over tea at Highgrove in his memoir, Spare. Something caught his attention. She appeared unconcerned and bored, as if she had more important things to do. Harry thought he knew why. He wasn't the heir, he was the spare. Her plans could not be made or broken by his opinion. William was. William was the one who would become king in the future. Thus, she wanted him on her side. All of Camilla's actions, including the press operation, the spin doctor, the lies she gave to reporters, and the 10 years she spent discreetly integrating her family into royal places. It was never really about fitting in well with a complex family or being a nice stepmother. The goal was always to ascend to the throne and hold it for as long as possible. She arrived. She is now the queen. However, Laura Lopes' exclusion is the first indication that the crown she battled for 30 years is already being taken away from her. She always understood she had to be afraid of the man pulling. As it has done for 8 centuries, the royal Mandy ritual came to an end at St. AF Cathedral, bearing the crown in complete humility before the people it serves, with however, the hallways behind it had already witnessed the most significant change in power in a generation. William has given up on becoming king. He's already behaving like one. Camilla now has to deal with a question that no sympathetic journalist will ever be able to twist or reinterpret. What would William do to her daughter when he eventually dons the crown himself if he were to do this to her while his father is still alive, still sitting on the throne, and still wearing the crown? Elf.